Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. Today I've got a great mate on mine on, Michael. I'll introduce you to him in a second. But first I'd love to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm currently calling in from. I'm here in Balwyn Kew in Melbourne on the land of the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. And I want to acknowledge any other Aboriginal people here today, including my guest Michael. Michael, how are you?
I'm good, brother. How you going?
I'm fine. Now, for people that don't know you, tell us who you are, where you're from.
Okay. My name's Michael Passi. I'm a Miriam man, so I'm from the Torres Straits. My dad's mob's from there in the Torres Straits, but I grew up in red dirt country out in northwest Queensland in a small town called Cloncurry. I'm actually here in Townsville on Bindal and Woolgaruga country, and I've been here since 1991 when I decided to move here. But so excited to be here. I'm really looking forward to this, bro.
I'm excited to have you on. Now, for people that don't know where the Torres Strait Islands are, because I do enough cultural awareness training where people actually have to ask the question to their clients, do you identify as being Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander? And when I honestly ask them, do you know where the Torres Straits are? Many of them don't. So tell us exactly where the Torres Strait Islands are.
Funny story with that, right? Because doing cultural awareness for over 18 years in the public service, when I first started delivering the training, I actually asked that same question in Canberra twice. And on my first couple of sessions there, and they said, yeah, we know where the Torres Straits are. It's just off Brisbane. I said, no, that's New Zealand. Like, well, you really don't know. So for those who don't know where the Torres Straits are, it's the big pointy thing where you Cape York Peninsula in Australia, between there and actual Papua New Guinea. So the Straits there, in the Arafura Sea, okay, it used to be where the old land bridge used to join Papua New Guinea and Australia many millennia ago, and that's the Torres Strait Islands. So there's over 200 islands up there, and obviously 3 languages spoken.
Yeah. So do you speak any of the languages?
No, my tongue don't roll that way, brother. But I can actually understand Creole.
Yeah.
But I because I grew up in red dirt country out west.
Yeah.
And my dad actually wanted us to fit in because he got a bit embarrassed seeing a lot of family and friends being made fun of because they couldn't speak English very well. So he made a point of speaking English and making us learn English. He's credited with us not being made fun of for not having good English, but to the detriment of not being able to speak the language now. But I do go up the islands. I do yarn with family up there in Creole. They promise not to laugh when I do it because I am on my learning journey. But yeah. I know myself, it doesn't sound completely authentically rolling the right way. But I'm still on my journey with getting the conversation and communication better.
So where did you go to school growing up?
Well, there wasn't many choices. So I grew up there and I went to St. Joseph's Catholic College, Catholic school there in Cloncurry, which was right across the road from my home, which was really convenient. I just jumped the fence and walked to the classroom. And then in grade 7, obviously, we left primary school and went to the high school, which was a state school there. So it was just a state school. Our class was the first class to have a computer, which was in grade 12. So that just shows how old I am.
Wow.
In the last semester of grade 12, we got to use this thing called a computer.
Was it this huge IBM thing?
And when you dialed up and then made that, then you had a cup of tea and while you're waiting for it to log on,
Yeah. Not as easy as we're doing it by Zoom today.
No. Yeah, definitely not. That's in the days when telephones used to be connected to a building. You couldn't carry them around.
I know, I know. And so you did get to finish year 12?
Yes.
Yep. And what did you just, while you're at school, what did you want to do when you grow up?
Well, it's funny you say that because I look back now and um, even like even though my granddad George, so my grandfather's younger brother, he was the first Torres Strait Islander to get a master's degree in Australia. And so he used to always sit me down for years and years under the sorrowbee tree there at Zommered Village and talk to me about how important education was and you should be someone that should go to university. And like he put that sort of thing in my head. And I actually got accepted into CQ University to do computer programming once I finished grade 12. But because we were poor, and mum was a single parent at that stage, we just went straight from school, finished school on Thursday, started working the railways on Monday as a lab porter in Cloncurry. Yeah. And so I never really followed any sort of career aspirations, and I never saw anyone that looked like me in something like the public service.
Yeah.
It was always, I thought maybe I could drive trucks or heavy machinery like my dad. That was the greatest ambition after that.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to, without traumatizing and going back to school, but just while you were still at school, how much First Nations studies or Aboriginal studies or Torres Strait Islander studies did you do at school, if any?
Well, apparently Jimmy Cook rocked up in Australia and he said g'day to Bennelong at Bennelong Point there, and then he decided to walk all over Australia, and everything was hunky dory, and that was pretty much it. Like it was all about Blaxland, Wentworth, and all the explorers and what they did. I actually had a grade 4 teacher, and I used this actually in my cultural awareness training. I think it was grade 4. And she actually told me that the massacres were something that was invented and made up. Yeah. So that, and I use that as an example of where we've come from to where we are now with our understanding of truth telling and stuff like that. Like that's something that I still remember many, many years on. And there was a monument down the road, about 50 kilometres down the road towards Mount Isa, where the Battle Mountain massacre took place, where the last remnants of the Kalkadoon people, was well, from my understanding, I've never actually seen the monument, but it talks about that massacre. So there you go.
And she still didn't believe it existed with the monument just down the road.
Well, I'm 57, so this was quite a few years ago. But so it's quite a few years ago. I'm pretty certain that that was more of an opinion than anything, rather than factual. But like I said, it was just one of those things. Lovely teacher and all that, but I think a bit misguided with thought process there.
Yeah. Now, growing up quite rural, when was the first time you actually went to a big city?
Oh, well, Townsville I considered as big cities. Because we never seen traffic lights and stuff until I think they had a couple of traffic lights here in Townsville when we used to travel when I was a kid, when we used to travel to Cairns to go up the Torres Strait. But when I came here in 91, there was definitely traffic lights here then. So to me, that constituted, that and McDonald's constituted the big city.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry, I did go in grade 12 to Brisbane. I do apologise.
Oh.
Because I went away for athletics because I set the 100-metre sprint record for Northwest Region. And I went away for 100, 200 and high jump to the state titles.
Yeah.
And the country bumpkin and me came out walking down the Brisbane Mall for the first time where I was saying g'day to everybody I went past, because in a small country town, if you get eye contact with somebody, you say g'day. So I'm walking down the middle of Brisbane Mall going, g'day, hey, g'day, mate, g'day. And then my mate goes, will you shut up? True story, because I'd never really seen that and waves, like proper waves, like dolphins.
Waves. Yes. So it would have been a bit of a culture shock initially.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So what was your first job in government? How did you get into government jobs?
Well, because being 6'2" and 140 kilos, I was a bouncer for 30 years because a face like this was made for breaking hands.
Yeah.
And I never really looked at doing something like that, because I did okay at school, but it wasn't something like, I've never seen anyone that looked like me doing a government type job, like behind a desk. And so when my sister-in-law said to me, because my son was born then, and she said, hey, there's a really, really good job here for Centrelink in the newspaper. So that's when they still advertised jobs in newspapers back in those days. And I was quite comfortable with just doing security in nightclubs, clubs and pubs. And I said, yeah, no worries. And I was never going to apply for it because I've never seen anyone that looked like me. So to get myself away from the conversation, I went to the toilet, just because she's very insistent sometimes. And when I've come out, she's got the phone in her hand and she goes, it's for you. I said, oh, who is it? She goes, it's Centrelink, it's your interview. And I said, well, at least wash my hands first. So I washed my hands and did my interview with Centrelink. And it ended up being somewhere near, I think it was like 8 interviews or something, because it was one of the biggest intakes. There was no affirmative measures in those days. It was just general entry. And so, because I already looked at going across to corrective services and stuff like that, because that was more my field. I could use my physical attributes rather than my brain. And my wife said to me, why don't you try something different and actually use your brain for once, instead of actually just relying on your physical attributes. So I did, and even in the intake interviews, and we ended up having group sessions, and a guy called Brian Small, so I'll tell you Brian Small, I'll keep getting, he's passed away now, he was one of the most genuine people I know, and he said to me, well, you didn't actually score that high on the skills as some of the other candidates, because still today I'm a 2-finger typer. I look like that cat in the typing Giphy thing that does that. I'm a 2-finger typer still after 25 years in the public service. But he said, you didn't score that highly, but you're the right person for the job. He said, so I'm going to employ you because you're the right person for the job. And 18 of us were employed that year, and only 3 of us were left when I left about 5 years ago. So this goes to show sometimes it's the right person. You can teach skills.
Yeah. So now you're running a business, and what made you decide to go in to do the consultancy that you've got now?
Well, 2 things. H was I was offered a voluntary redundancy to leave, so that was a bit of a bonus. Bonus. And I thought, okay, this can be an opportunity. But secondly, one of the things that I found, 25 years in the public service, especially when I found my niche in the cultural capability space, where I was helping to develop and deliver cultural awareness training, cultural capability training, all those sort of things, was that I saw some areas where I could support, but due to like having to stay in your lane, when you work in a certain area, and if you work in public service long enough, everyone gets a bucket of money, so their staff do their work, and they don't want to share the staff across the network too much if they've got a really good asset, unless they come up some lateral thinking. But the big thing was, I noticed in my time there in that training space, there was a definite knowledge gap between having both Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledge, so that cultural capability jigsaw puzzle had one piece missing, which was the Torres Strait. And it became very apparent, especially when I was training a lot of the facilitators, how we had very little Torres Strait input, perspectives, and even facilitators that were confident enough to educate non-Indigenous staff on the culture. And like I said, a lot of them didn't even know, if you're south of the Queensland border, where the Torres Strait Islands actually are. So that's why with the cultural consultancy business, I just thought, well, this is my opportunity to share that, especially the lessons learned in the cultural awareness training delivery side of things. I made so many mistakes on my journey, so many, like it's just ridiculous how bad I was at the start. And from those things, I learned so much. And if I could share that with new facilitators coming through, what it does is it allows their participants to get a better experience when they do that. And of course, builds the cultural capability of the organisation, better service delivery, better outcomes for Indigenous people and communities. So that's where my brain went with this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Now, a word that gets thrown around a lot is cultural safety. Yeah. What does cultural safety mean to you personally, and what things make you feel culturally safe when you go to a service?
Oh, look, it's actually a tricky one. It gets bandied around a lot, like the cultural safety aspect. And I think the best summary that I always sort of went into was being able to bring your whole self to work. Yeah, and that's like when you walked in, like what you said was valued, what you did was valued. You were allowed to have a different perspective, because culturally, from your perspective, that was a different angle that you saw things at. To me, that's something that's culturally a safe workplace environment, and just a culturally safe place. But I've seen a lot of culturally unsafe places, and that can be something it's quite traumatizing. But I will say, from 25 years ago to now, the improvement is quite noticeable for me. That's only my personal journey. I can't speak for everybody's journey.
Yeah,
I'm just saying for me. But I always went in with that intent of, if it's not culturally safe, I'm going to drive the change. That was me. I'm a bit stubborn. I'm a bit pig-headed and stuff like that. So if there was something and I didn't agree with it because of that, but I always remembered this one thing that someone said to me, and it was one of the smartest things that someone's ever told me. He said, know when to be rock and know when to be water. He said, because so many of us make our mistakes. He's a original deadly fellow there from Newcastle, you reckon. So one of our biggest problems is we've got so many of our mob that just dig our heels in for everything and fight and die on every hill. But they've got to learn that sometimes you need to be rock, but sometimes you need to be water, and be a bit flexible. Win the war, not the battle.
Yeah.
So that's one of the lessons I took from him. I thought that was made, especially when you've got to play that game in the public service of being a team player as well as advocate for change. You've got to know when to be rock, when to be water.
Yeah. Now, what do you think is one of the biggest stereotypes that people might have around Torres Strait Islanders? Because you're right that often when you hear Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural awareness training, there is very little Torres Strait Islander content. Now, I'll agree with you. What do you think is the either a stereotype or something that you like to break in Torres Strait Islander culture to let people know about that they don't know?
The biggest stereotype for me is that we're exactly the same, like Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, because it rolls off the tongue so easily, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. So everyone thinks we're the same. That's the biggest stereotype. The biggest thing that I try to share with like participants of my cultural awareness sort of thing, or cultural capability trainings that I do, is to be respectful to both cultures. You need to understand there's two separate cultures that are unique, diverse, and beautiful cultures, right? So you're not disrespecting one if you have an understanding of the differences of both of them, because then you can appreciate the differences and you can service them appropriately and more, in a way that better accommodates cultural protocols and stuff. But that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah. The reason I asked is I'm always very clear even when I write things down. I tell people don't even write Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. I go talk about Aboriginal peoples, Torres Strait Islander peoples, because that way it's distinctive, and there's more than one Aboriginal culture and there's more than one Torres Strait Islander culture. And out of respect, use the plurals of putting S's on the end, even though if it takes longer and using more characters in the writing, but just to make it very clear about the differences. Yeah. And I think the other one that I have is, as I think I said before, is people actually knowing where the Torres Strait Islands actually are. And so in your job, and I work in a lot of health sector, and people have to ask that question, do you identify as being Aboriginal, and or that place I've got no idea where it is? Because if they don't know exactly where the Torres Strait Islands are, why are you actually asking the question? And it makes them stop to think for a second. Yeah, I really should know exactly what it is. And I think the other thing I think a lot of people don't realise is that the meanings of the Torres Strait Islander flag, what the signs and symbols actually mean. They're pretty good with the Aboriginal flag, but the Torres Strait Islander flag, they're still not 100%.
It's funny. I'll share a funny story with you, brother.
Yeah, sure.
I laugh because it's just it's because I always create a safe space so people can share their thoughts without being mocked or ridiculed. But one of the funniest things of an explanation of the Torres Strait flag was, the headdress, the durry that's in the centre of the flag. So many people, especially south of the Queensland border, think it's a cowboy wearing chaps from behind walking away. and for me, it's actually funny because I'm very appreciative of the fact that they feel safe enough to say where their head went. But like I said to some people, I said, well, once you see that, you can't unsee that, but it's definitely not a cowboy wearing chaps from behind walking away. But you're right; they don't know much about the Torres Strait flag at all.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest question that organisations are still wanting to know about working with First Nations people?
See, and that's a really good question. So across the board, what agencies are wanting to, because what it is to me, it's trying to make the mainstream KPIs, right, fit into a cultural mindset to become a priority, if you know what I mean. So trying to get what is a priority here in mainstream to try and get somewhere where we can meet in the middle, where we've got cultural priorities. Because I worked the majority of the time in the social security sector. So that was 20 years of my life there. And just trying to make the two worlds meet and engage and work together is such a difficult ground to navigate. And as I always say too, with a lot of these agencies that I've delivered training for, is we're not a hive mentality. Like you said, there's different Aboriginal mob all over Australia. There's different Torres Strait Islanders in the central, western, and eastern islands, but also you've got the NPA area, and you've got different. We're not a hive mentality. So the way we see or take on some of these sort of engagements can differ so widely from East Coast to West Coast, or from top to the bottom of Australia. So all of these sort of things just make it very, very difficult jigsaw puzzle to solve. So I think that's where, to me, it's all about how do we engage successfully to that without thinking too deeply about it. That's just my experience on my journey in the ABS.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned you had a son. How many kids do you have?
I've got the two boys. So my eldest son, he was in the he was in the Defence Force as a recruiter, Indigenous recruiter for the Army.
Yeah.
And my youngest son here is a school officer for one of the schools here. And my youngest son, like me, is a bit creative and helped me co-author and illustrate our book that's being published by the Indigenous Literacy Foundation. On 29th of June, we've got our first book launch, but it's a retelling of a traditional Torres Strait Islander story for the ages between 5 and 9, because you don't see many Torres Strait Islander stories that are available for children. So I've got state schools and Catholic education on board to try and support the release of the book, as well as the National Library, State Library, and the local libraries here. And it's just... I'm a storyteller, as you would have known from the 30 seconds when we were talking at the start. I'm always telling a yarn about something.
Yeah, that's right.
And I always, and that's the thing why I'm very passionate about the book, is because, well, you know yourself, delivering cultural awareness to adults, they've already been influenced by mainstream biases and myths and fallacies that are out there. Children have a genuine curiosity. So if I can tell a story and generate that little bit of genuine curiosity towards my culture in the Torres Straits, I'm planting a seed there that hopefully will germinate into something beautiful when they become an adult, and they may actually go, you know what, I remember this. One of my favourite stories growing up was, Gaggy the Stubborn Boy, and so I want to learn more about the Torres Strait. So instead of swimming against a strong current like I have in cultural awareness sessions in many, many occasions, because mainstream already influenced mindsets, if I can plant that seed of genuine curiosity through the power of storytelling when they're young enough to actually have an open mind, when they get older and we raise that topic about culture and Aboriginal and Torres Strait culture, something's sitting in the back of their brain going, you know what, I really want to learn. So, well, that's I know it can be a bit idealistic and all that sort of stuff, but you don't plant a tree to sit in the shade yourself. You plant a tree for the people who follow you to sit in that shade.
Yeah. And I think that people, I always say that those trees and those people sitting under the trees is what the white fellas didn't see was our schools.
Yeah.
That they came from a place where there was big buildings, churches, schools, hospitals, and when they got to Australia, they didn't see those things. And what they saw was, that old lady under a tree talking, and that's all they saw. But really, that was our school.
Well, I talked about Grandad George. Like we spent hours under that sorrowbee tree in my granddad's backyard there in Zommered Village on there. And still to this day, I don't know. Or him and Gumalata, they spent a lot of time talking to me. I was in primary school, like, why are these two old men sitting down yarning to me? I wanted to be out there playing with the other kids. But they must have saw, like Dad said to me, they must have saw something in me because they didn't do it with the other kids. Like it was just me. They would sit down and they would go through a lot of this cultural stuff, a lot of, you can make a change if you go to uni. You can make a change if you do this. And I think, I've never gone to uni. I don't have any letters behind my name, so I didn't go there. But I have a lot of qualifications from the University of Life.
Yeah,
So I made a lot of mistakes along the way. But yeah.
And I've got another question for you, and that is the word reconciliation comes up a lot.
Yeah.
What does reconciliation mean to you?
Well, see, first thing with reconciliation, and everything I say today, AJ, is my personal opinion. It's just from my perspective and my thing. So when it comes to reconciliation, I think of when people reconcile, it's two groups coming together or two people coming together. It's not from one direction or the other. Like the thing is, to have true reconciliation, you have to meet in the middle somewhere. You know what I mean? And so I see a lot of good being done, but I also see a lot of harm being done in the reconciliation space because somebody's gone too hard in one direction, if you know what I mean. Like it's because we have to build allies along the way. If you go so hard that it's a us and them mentality, then to me, and this is only my opinion, like it's controversial, most probably, but you've got to take people on your journey with you. You've got to let them discover what their place in the puzzle is to reconciliation, rather than dictating, this is what you should do. Like, you can point out things that will be really helpful, but I've always been of the opinion I'm not going to wait for some white fellow to ride in on a white horse and shining armour to rescue me. I'm going to actually empower myself, my family, those peers that I work with or mentor. I'm going to empower you from within. Like, you need to actually be that shining light that people are drawn to, right? And that people come to you and say, hey, what can we do to help the process that you've started? Rather than, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, I need you to do that. And like I said, that's probably going to have a few people that are not going to agree with that. And but if we're going with honesty, that's my honest opinion. I want to be that shining light that draws people to me, and the people that I build up and support, I want them to have people coming to them to ask, where do I fit in the jigsaw puzzle?
Yeah. A question I asked all my guests on is that if I had a magic wand and $1 zillion and said, here, go for it, you can change something in Indigenous affairs in Australia, where would you start?
That is such a good question. My brain just exploded. That's the wealth of opportunities that I would love to see. To be honest, there's one thing it's like a balancing act. You put all your eggs in that basket, it'll tip something here, and vice versa. And so to me, what I would love to see is if I had unlimited resources and all that, I would love to see, ambition and goals and dreams being promoted through our mob, because sometimes we get limited by like I said, I never saw myself doing what I do today because I never was encouraged to dream big, you know what I mean? But the one thing that $1 zillion would facilitate is providing not only the encouragement, but also the real life steps on how to achieve it. Because there's no use having the goals and the dreams, but you then have to have a reality check and say, as someone once said to me that I'm very respectful of, he said, if you want to progress yourself in your career, you've got to ask yourself one question: what am I honestly willing to do to make that happen, that dream happen, that goal happen?
Yeah.
You know what it takes to make it happen. Well, what are you honestly willing to do? Are you willing to go to university? Are you willing to move geographical locations? All of those things. But $1 zillion, I would love to dream build. I would love to then provide the steps and even the opportunity for people to follow those dreams. It sounds really airy-fairy and stuff like that, but I don't want to unbalance the scales one way or the other, because I just think there's so many kids out there with dreams that get shot down because you don't want to be an astronaut because you're Murray from the curry, as we say. You're never gonna be an astronaut. Well, then that kid stops trying.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look how many people we've seen getting past the moon recently.
Yes.
Right.
I've met a few space cadets, but
yeah, I think that's a different space cadet. But yeah, definitely. And I've got another question that comes up. You talked about the word ally.
Yes.
What makes a good ally?
An ally to me is someone who doesn't try to take over and fight the battle for you. Okay. And like I said, once again, these are my personal opinions. Some of the best allies that I've ever had have been people that simply believed in me. You know what I mean? And they said they gave me opportunities by not opening the door, but pointing out the door for me and saying, you know what, you are good enough to do this. Don't lose focus, don't lose faith in that, and allowing me to actually take the steps I needed to build into that. Because if I would have had an ally that opened the doors and sat me down in a comfy chair, I would never have had the struggles that I had, and I definitely would not have made the mistakes that I've made. Like, I've made some zinger mistakes, like some absolute crackers. But I was lucky that people picked me up, dusted me off, said, you'll be okay, still believe in you, and they allowed me to get up and get going again. To me, that was something that I actually ran into one of my allies the other day, my old team leader. Technically speaking, she wasn't the best. She didn't, but you know what? Every day when I was like messing up, she'd get, right, let's put a strategy in place for you to get past this challenge. You can do this. I believe in you. Yeah. That's me. Some people see allies as something different, but that's just me.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I also like what Bindi Bennett has to say sometimes about allyship, and one thing she adds to that is that you don't have to be a fantastic ally all the time, but you have to be a consistent ally all the time.
Yeah.
Which means that you're going to get it wrong at times. You're not going to get it right all times, because this is our life and you're coming into our world to sometimes create pathways that we may not be able to actually get. But a true ally is also a person that can stand up and say, hey, I effed it up, but how do I move forward? Because by not doing anything, you're not the ally. But at least if you have a go, you're the ally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing, sorry, I can't.
Yes, don't apologise.
When I was mentoring, because I used to mentor a lot of our new staff coming into the place, and one of the things I used to always commit to when I was mentoring is, I will make myself available to help you when you need me, not when it's convenient. That was my biggest commitment to the guys that I mentored, and surprisingly, I had a really good success rate with the guys that I mentored. But that was one commitment I made to them. I will be there when you need me, not when it's convenient for me.
Yeah, that's good. Now, I know I'm watching the time, and I know that we have to wind it up, because you're always welcome to come back for a second episode. No problem about that. But I want to ask you a final question, and that is, what would you like people to walk away with from our yarn this morning?
That's a really good question. From this, look, the one thing that I've always wanted to do is I wanted to make a difference out there, the way that we approach, the way that we do things in, like I said, I'm not a public servant, so I'm going back to along those sort of lines, and with my business, it's all about having the bravery to consider doing things different and the commitment to follow through with, we've talked about a Torres Strait Islander resource, and we wanted to do this for the public service. So now it's time to put your money where your mouth is. There's a resource out there that's available, commit to it, do it. That's what I want people to understand. It's all well about good to be someone who talks. It's the action that means something to me, show by your actions, not by your words. And that's me. Yeah.
That's great. Look, I want to say thank you for hanging with me for the last 45 minutes or so. I admire the work that you do. I'm following you on social media. I'm going to make sure at the bottom of the YouTube channel, we've got all your details for Michael Passi Consultancy, so people can actually contact you direct. Because I'm sure you can do workshops right around Australia online. I'm pretty sure you're doing that too. So we'll make sure that we have all your advertisement details up as well. But I do want to say thank you very much for hanging with me. I really appreciate it, and I know our listeners will appreciate it too, because a bit like I've been interviewing lots of First Nations people, but we do have very few Torres Strait Islander guests on, and I'm glad that you could be able to join us today and give us a bit of an insight and a thought that for people that don't know much about Torres Strait Islands, that there are Torres Strait Islander specific cultural awareness training that people can actually do as well. So I want to say thank you very much. Love the work that you do, and thanks for joining us.
And can I say thank you so much, brother, for having me, especially since you're my first podcast. So I really am so thankful. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much, brother.
Thanks, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next podcast. Bye.